Real estate, family business, and building a legacy. It's a journey I'm navigating every day.
Both as a managing director and as a father. From making big decisions to adapting to Gen Z, industry trends, and smart investments, it's all about growth, ethics, and evolving together. Of course, there's a little fun along the way with my daughter as well. Hi, this is Diya. Diya wears multiple hats in my life. While she works in my team, which means she works reporting to me, she is also a co-owner of our business. She's a shareholder, which means she's equal to me. Diya also happens to be my daughter. In some ways, she would think that she's above me. In some ways, as a daughter, she is not. Diya joined our family business about 5 years ago. And one of the concerns that she had was, how does working in the family business affect our relationship? So I'm going to start by asking you, how's it going?
I think it's been a great 5 years, very honestly. If I was to think about where we started in terms of navigating, and very early on, if you recall, we set up some ground rules where we talked about managing director, we talked about managing dad, and we talked about my dad as the three MDs in our lives, right? In my life. And I think that's worked really well for us. Like I know I send you emails which will contextualize which type of MD I'm speaking to. I know when we're switching, you'll quite often ask me to say, how do you want me to respond to this? Am I wearing the managing director hat? Am I wearing the managing dad hat? And I think I personally think that's worked quite well in terms of navigating the complexities involved in the number of relationships we've got in place.
I have to tell you, I'm so glad we have this framework because sometimes you're asking me a question and I'm thinking to myself, should I just be supportive, right? Or should I be supportive but give you some feedback? Or am I supposed to be just like the MD in that and say that it worked or didn't work? So I think putting it into that context and I know, and you realize that sometimes a daughter just wants to vent, right? And sometimes you also want to vent as just being part of the team.
Yeah.
Right? It happens, right? I'm sure people in your team want to just come and vent.
Yeah, I think that happens. Very naturally happens, right? And like you said, I thought about it from my perspective, but what we've not thought about and I hadn't actually touched upon is your perspective around how you've navigated this. Because obviously, like you're saying, right, the complexity involved even for you and the guesswork involved, we sort of removed. So how have you navigated the personal relationship versus the personal relationship, the family relationship, the work relationship, even in your mind with me joining? And was there something that you were concerned about when I joined?
So I think we talked about it, and I think my concerns were pretty much the same, right? And I have the added sort of responsibility that, and you remember we always said that joining the business is not a mandate for you. You don't have to do it, right? You do it if you want to do it. And for me, I think the challenge was, if you choose to do it, how do we get you geared up and how do we get you ready and how do we get you in a place where you learn the ropes, you get the exposure to all aspects of the business, because if you choose to, then one day this is going to be your responsibility. So in addition to making sure that our relationship in fact flourishes through us working together, let alone it getting bad, I don't know if have you seen the TV show Succession?
Yeah.
Okay. That's freaking crazy.
That's not a family.
Right? That's not, I mean, that's just deranged. And obviously, and you hear about stories about other families where they have challenges. And for me, I think our relationship was paramount. So how do we make sure that the relationship gets stronger through this journey? How do we get more time together through this journey?
Yeah, I think we've done that pretty well.
And I think also for me the added layer is the exposure to the multiple aspects, your induction, the different types of roles that you're going to play, so that eventually this becomes something that you enjoy running, and for you the business is an asset and not a liability in the long run.
I love that. There's a couple of things you said which I absolutely love, like our relationship flourishing, asset, the business being an asset rather than a liability, making sure I learn right. And if I was to talk about the learning right, and pick up on that, I know my induction was something you spent hours on, very honestly. I remember even before I joined, before I moved back from London, we would talk, we would say, how would we structure this? We talked about the different teams that I would rotate through. You spend a lot of time thinking that through. I just want to understand what what drove that decision to say, like, maybe how was your induction? How did you look at your journey and then navigate my journey into the business?
So, so my journey in that sense was extremely different, right? So, the business was much
Okay.
smaller, and I remember I came back from the US, and it was October '91,
Okay.
right? And there were two things that were going on a parallel track. On the macroeconomic perspective, India was in terrible shape. Okay, we were in an economic crisis, and that's when all the liberalization and all of that started. Okay, so at the macroeconomic level, we had that going on, and that impacted us at the business level, but more importantly at the family level. My grandfather, Baridedi, was not doing too well at all. He was unwell, and so Dadaji and Dadima and both my grandparents were in the hospital, in and out. He had cancer. He was in and out of hospital, and then they flew him to the US.
Oh, so
And
you.
all four of them were in the US for about 6 weeks. I was like just here, and in those days it was just strange for me. Like your Dadaji was like running the business. I step in, and for the rest of the team, suddenly I was like the guy,
Yeah, this has happened. This
right?
happened so easily.
And they just would come to me and said, "Sir, we need money. So we need this. We need that." And this sir kind of thing when you're 22, and it was challenging. We were dealing with cash flow crisis, and I think Dadaji came back 6 8 weeks later, and they all came back, and I think they were just happy that the place was still running, right? And but I think those early days of being in a tight cash flow position,
Yeah.
I think has had a massive impact on where we are today, and which is why I think we're so risk averse, and why making sure that adequate cash flow is that important. And I think then it's translated into our credit ratings. So those early days had a massive sort of impact, and we were much smaller at the time. So clearly, my induction was very different from what we had to create for you.
Yeah.
For you, I think it was, for me, the goal and the objective was to make sure that you get the all round exposure, step by step by step. And you'll remember when you joined, I gave you a letter,
You did.
right? And I sat and wrote out a number of my experiences and failures, because I wanted you to realize that it's not all success. You will have failures, you will have challenging moments, and my decision was that the way I will lead in this situation was to be supportive,
Okay.
was to be available for you, let you take your decisions, give you a suggestion. If you choose not to take it, you don't take it. Okay? And if you still take a decision which I advise you not to take, but you take it, I would still be by your side. And if it became a mess, we'd fix it. But that's the way you would learn.
Yeah.
So that's what I sort of read a little bit, figured out a little bit, and that's how I kind of approached the whole induction plan for you.
I think it worked, right? If I was to reflect today, even in terms of the last aspect that you touched upon, right, around the decision making and the courage to take my own decisions. If I think back to year one versus today, I'm much more confident in any decision. And I know even more recently, there's been ways that you've suggested, and I've been like, no, I'm doing this
Yeah.
my way, and it's
Yeah.
okay. I will make the mistake. I'll figure it out. Especially like technology implementation, some of the change management programs that we've been looking at, and we've had differences of view sometimes. I think we've been able to navigate those pretty well, and not actually take those home,
Yeah.
which to me is paramount in making sure that that dynamic that we started with talking about is protected. What I also wanted to actually reflect on is you mentioned that letter,
Yeah.
and I remember reading that, and I remember now a lot of the values that got built in because of that. I think when I joined the business, like we were talking about the macroeconomic condition, when you joined, the macroeconomic condition when I joined was the other end. We were just going into a boom time. We saw sales like never before. And so the discipline, the value system, it would have been very easy to get carried away had that induction, had the notes, had the planning not been so precise, to say that the discipline around risk, and I now look at risk, right, as one of the
Yes.
functions that I look at. That learning and that grounding, I think, has just been, and I hope has been very, very strong and powerful. And I guess we'll find out.
We'll
We'll
find
find out
out.
in time to come.
We'll find out.